If you've been listening to the podcast for a while and thought, man, I would love to grab a drink and pick the brain of some of these guests I've been listening to, or maybe me as well, here's your shot. I'm putting on an event this April called Elevate. This is the third year doing this, and we're going to be in Phoenix, Arizona, where we're going to have the top agency owners really come together, share what's working, get real on what's not, and really help each other scale faster. So if you're ready to finally get out of the weeds and grow your agency the right way, I want you to join me and 50 other amazing 7 and 8 figure agencies at Elevate. You'll connect with people who've been there, leave with a real growth plan, and actually enjoy the process. Now, we only have a few tickets left, so make sure you go over to elevatemyagency.com to lock in your spot now. Go to elevatemyagency.com now.
Lacie, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Lacie Edgeman. I am a partner and co-owner of Programmetrics. Programmetrics is a digital paid media agency. That's all we do. We specialize in that, and specifically more of a focus too on the programmatic side. So that's what we do here. And my role, I have a finance background, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit today. And so my role is really on the operations and finance side, although with a smaller agency, you find yourself dabbling in all kinds of things.
Yeah. How'd you get into the agency world?
Yeah, it's an interesting path for me. It's a nonlinear path, which I think a lot of people listening to this podcast might relate to. So I actually have my finance degree and really was looking at moving to Austin, Texas, and was able to join an agency there kind of at the ground floor, being a billing coordinator. And I just fell in love with the agency space. Quite honestly, I think people either really love it or they really hate it is kind of what I feel like. It's not for everybody, but I love the fast-paced environment. I love the fact that every single day I'm working on something a little bit different. I love that it challenges me. That's my favorite part about the agency world.
That's awesome. And when did the agency start?
Yeah, our agency was founded in 2015. So we had our 10-year anniversary this year, which is, I think, always an exciting milestone for any agency.
Yeah, congrats. Yeah, we just hit 11 years,
Nice.
which is crazy. The first agency I did for 12. So next year will be 12. And then the following, I'll be like, man, I can't believe I've been doing this almost as long as the first agency. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah. It's crazy how time flies. Again, I think just in the agency space, because we are so busy and there's a lot of moving parts and we're constantly using our brains to figure out new and exciting things to do, it does tend to fly by, at least for me.
So since you have a finance focus, what are the things that you focus on to make sure your agency is going in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from a finance perspective, some things that I look for is honestly a lot of future planning. So a lot of things that I think get missed. It's important to look at the historicals, obviously, to make sure how you're tracking. But I think the best thing on our side is to actually set a forecast and then revisit that forecast on a quarterly basis, right? So a lot of times we'll build in some forecasts on revenue numbers, those sorts of things. And I think then you back out what are the goals we need to hit in order to achieve these numbers. So for example, it's one thing to put, hey, I want to add $1 million in revenue, take home revenue, right, this year for my business, but then not have a plan on how you're going to do that, right? And so I think when you're not looking at the future and you're not future focused, you miss out on the opportunities to do some very strategic planning work to help you get from point A to point B. So that's a lot of what I enjoy too. The work I enjoy is to look at the forward focusing. And then everything that we're looking at historically is really looking at how we did against that performance and whether we need to make any adjustments. Maybe we thought a particular industry was going to be really great for us, and we've been going after that industry for 6 months, but we're not seeing the traction, right? At what point as agency owners do we make the decision to say, okay, this is not working, we need to pivot? And those are questions I can't answer. Like, I can't give you a specific day, like 6 months and 3 days, right? It's just you kind of understand if the market is telling you something and if you need to make adjustments.
Yeah, I remember one time we were coming into our leadership meeting, and at the time I would do budgeting like this. I would log into my SunTrust account and I would see how much money is in there. And I went to Kirby, my business partner at the time, and I was like, man, like if something doesn't change, we're not going to make payroll. It stressed me so much out. And I was probably such a horrible human being to be around for those 2 weeks. We made payroll. We never missed payroll. And we always paid our bills on time. But that was the closest we ever got. From that point on, we started doing forecasting and doing a model where it would look at the sales pipeline and our conversion rate. It would look at the cash coming in, our accounts receivable, which at the time I didn't know what accounts receivable was. I was just like, oh, like Kirby explained to me, he's like, that's the money coming in. I was like, well, that's what I call it, money coming in, not accounts receivable. I was highly technical, played an accountant, I guess, in college. But, once we started doing that, it changed everything because we kept going to that model to determine, can we afford that person to add to the team? Can we afford to go to this event? Can we do this? Or what's going to happen 6 months from now, with our revenue? And it just made me sleep at night a little bit better.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing what kind of a forecast will do. And I think you brought up a really good point. One of the first changes, so I joined the team in 2019. And one of the first changes I made was I went to accrual accounting instead of cash accounting.
Explain that to some people.
Yeah, for sure. So it's not for everybody. It takes a lot of kind of manual work on a bookkeeping perspective. But the reason I went to accrual accounting, so accrual accounting is when you're recognizing or looking at data that is actually what has happened in that time period. So in our business, as you can imagine, media, right? We're getting large influx of cash
before we do the work.
Before we do the work, right? Yeah. So we may be getting a huge payment that's just a pass-through cost, right? We're just going to be paying that to the DSP that we're using or Instagram, right? Facebook or whatever platforms we're using. And so for us to say, wow, we had a great month and we got this huge influx of cash is completely not true. And it's a very hard way to run your business when you have all these lumps, right? You have these cash lumps in your business. So what we ended up doing was moving to accrual accounting where we show the money coming in, we push it to the balance sheet so it doesn't hit the P&L, right? It doesn't hit revenue, doesn't hit expenses. And we only move that into the P&L where we see the actual revenue being recognized when we do the work, right? So we usually have a management fee that's tied to the media that we're placing. And that's when we would recognize that management fee when the media is placed instead of being on a cash system. I mean, as you can imagine, trying to run your business on a cash system when you are a media agency it's extremely difficult, if not impossible.
I'd always laugh when I'd talk to my media agency friends and they'd be like, I'm 50 million, I'm 100 million in revenue. I'm like, how many employees you got? 20. I'm like, you are so freaking full of shit.
Yeah.
I was like, you cannot count media as revenue, like only service fee. And then the other part, this is where it got me when I sold my agency. It doesn't matter if you're doing cash or accrual, but I just was thinking about this. When we sold, we were kings of getting paid up front for so many clients. And there was a lot of work that we didn't deliver yet because we were kings of getting paid up front and really building that cash flow so I could sleep at night. But when you sell, this is what you got to think about. Now, a smart buyer won't do this until the very end and say, Jason, Lacie, you were collected 500,000 in revenue that you haven't delivered yet. And you do this like the night before or the day before and be like, that's going to come out of the purchase price because we still have to deliver that. I just want you guys to be prepared for that.
That is a great point. I think too, when you are not on an accrual accounting method, that's extremely possible, right? For that to happen. And I think that's a great point, especially for all the listeners, right? Because you obviously had some financial exposure, right? Obviously, with everything that you've done as an agency owner, and myself having a finance degree and kind of having some of these strategic conversations. I think this is all really good insight to anybody who owns an agency who, whether you're ready to sell or not, these are, I think, good things for you to consider in how you're running your business.
Yeah, it was a stressful. I was like, really? I was like, you're going to take that much out? I'm like,
Yeah.
no. Good thing it was just a big check.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
that is extremely stressful and unfortunate that they did it last minute. Not surprised, by the way, but unfortunate.
and that goes back to, you want to surround yourself with people that have been there and done it and good advisors. When I sold my agency, the only person I surrounded myself with was the broker.
Mm,
And looking
yeah.
back, that was a mistake because how do brokers get paid? They get paid when you sell
Yeah.
on a commission of what you were sold for. So when they were saying, yeah, this is a good deal or any of that, didn't matter to them. They just wanted to get paid. So it's just a lesson I always like to kind of push to everyone else of like, surround yourself with people that don't have anything in the game.
Yeah. I think that's a great advice just as an agency owner in general, right? When it comes to specifically finance and numbers, right? I think that a lot of listeners probably come from a creative background, meaning maybe you were a creative director and you were frustrated and you wanted to start your own agency because you were frustrated that you didn't have the creative freedom, perhaps at your other agency, right? I hear the story quite a bit from other agency owners. And in that case, right, it is a blind spot for a lot of people, right? Not being able to understand or manage your finances, but it's an important piece of the business puzzle that needs to be incorporated into your mindset as an agency owner. It's something you can't ignore. However, you can get help, right? You can surround yourself with those people who know how to do these things, who can help coach and guide you. I don't think it ever lets you off the hook. You need to have some basic understanding of business practices and finances, but you don't have to love being in QuickBooks, right? You don't ever have to love doing your financials. You can hire somebody to do that or an advisor to help you with that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Or I'll give us a shameless plug. Go to askquick.ai and you can connect your QuickBooks into our AI CFO and it could give you some perspective. I still think you do want to surround yourself with the professionals as well, but it is a tool that I wish I had when I was doing the first agency or even the second agency. I think it could have avoided a lot of gotchas.
Yeah.
Because until
Yeah.
you're measuring your weight and you're like, man, I weigh 230. And you're like, God, man, I remember weighing 215. Like, and then the next thing you know, you're like 250. You're like, what the hell? If I was measuring it, I'd be like, I could have got that under control earlier.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think too, you make a really good point with the product, right? That you just newly created because in finance, there's a lot of different aspects to finance, right? There's the manual entry into your accounting books, right? That needs to be done. Some more of that manual work, but then there's the analysis part, right? That forecasting part, that review part, which is where I'm excited about the tool that you mentioned on the call because I think that can really help some agency owners understand the numbers, right? It's one thing to put the numbers in, it's another to understand the numbers and what they're telling you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I just found is there's so much data. It's a data warehouse in QuickBooks or accounting system.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But what are we supposed to do with that? Because a lot of times a lot of us are not fortunate to have someone with the finance background in the agency to help us with this. It's just like, I don't know, I'm collecting my invoices 15 days after I send them, and that's good to me. But then you actually start looking and you're like, wait, our accounts receivables are going to 60 days? Like, I thought
Yeah.
they were paying at 15 days. And then you're like, man, I could do so much more, with this money. And it's just, until you
Yeah.
really start measuring, you're kind of guessing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, how do you do anything sort of forward focused unless you start measuring, right? That's the first part of it, because we all have aspirations, right? Hey, I want to sell my agency in 3 years for $20 million. Okay, well, how are you going to get there? Where are you at today? And then what steps are you going to do to get there if that's really what you want to achieve in the next 3 years, right?
Hi there, agency owners. Let me ask you, are you ready to scale your agency without increasing your overhead costs? If yes, then you need to know about E2M Solutions. Now, E2M is the number one most reliable white label partner for agencies. They specialize in web design, WordPress development, e-commerce, SEO, and content writing. They basically do all the heavy lifting, which frees you up to focus on growing your agency. Now, here's the best part. E2M is just not another vendor. With over 10 years of experience, their team of over 300 experts has a track record of delivering for more than 300 agencies. They're your strategic partner. They deliver on time every time, so you can focus on what you do best. Now, E2M's mission is simple: to help 500 agencies increase their revenue and profit margins with white label services that actually work. And to help you get started, they're offering a special deal, 10% off for the first 3 months, but act fast because it's only a limited time offer. So head over to e2msolutions.com/smartagency to check out their transparent and their flexible pricing. Trust me, if you're ready to grow without burning out, E2M is the partner you've been looking for. That's e2msolutions.com/smartagency. Go check them out and tell them Jason Swank sent you.
What are the other KPIs? Like, let's say you're on a deserted island. You have a butler. He brings you a napkin with numbers on it. Only can fit on a little napkin, like a little cocktail napkin. What are the KPIs on it?
Yeah, I think for me, that is the top line revenue number. And that I want to be very clear that your top line revenue number should not include any media spend. You've mentioned that earlier. So it should be only the revenue that you've worked for that you can recognize. Again, ideally, it would be on an accrual basis so that it's just the revenue that you've recognized that you know you've done the work for. So that would be one number. The second number would be EBITDA or EBITDA, depending on how you pronounce it, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, which is a mouthful, which is why there's an abbreviation. But basically, it's saying, what can I take home? What am I taking home before I have to pay taxes and before I kind of see what interest I'm getting on my accounts? And that's a big, strong number because you could have great revenue, but really crappy EBITDA, which is not great for either selling your agency or growing your agency, right? You need to have some free flowing funds in order to reinvest into the company, in order to grow the agency strategically, obviously. But that's also for most agency owners, that's also how you're getting paid, is that number, right? So that number, I don't think can be discounted. I think play between those two numbers is interesting because, as I mentioned, you may have really great revenue, but really crappy EBITDA. And my opinion is you can only cut costs so far. So, right, you should go through a cost-cutting measure to make sure you're not signed up for a whole bunch of subscriptions you don't use anymore, that you're actually getting utility out of all of your expenses. But once you go through that exercise, there's not really much more you can cut, right? You need to be cognizant of where you're investing future funds. But at the end of the day, we believe that the revenue really drives our EBITDA because we are watching our expenses, right? So once you've gone through that measure, I think there's an interesting play. Once you kind of cover what you call your nut, I don't know if people on the call know what this is, but your nut is how much you have to make on a monthly basis to cover your expenses. Once you cover that, any additional revenue you're bringing in is just a cherry on top, right? It just goes straight to the bottom line. And it allows you to, again, invest in your company and or pay yourself as an agency owner.
Yeah. I also tell people there's adjusted EBITDA as well, because as owners, there's things that I'll say it. I mean, this is way, many years past, the IRS can't come after me. We had a race team at the first agency that, we pushed a lot of revenue too. But when we sold, obviously we adjusted that. Or a lot of times, I tell, our agency members, I'm like, that should be what you pay us to be in the mastermind community. That is adjustable, right? Because that's not going to continue going forward. So don't think about if you're trying to get your EBITDA to a certain amount, you can take that out. So like you can adjust these things. And then also too, I tell people too, like if it's a building year, great, build it, invest in your own business until you get to maybe 2 or 3 years out of when you actually want to have the opportunity to sell. Then I say, well, all right, let's really keep track of this. You still can do the adjusted, right? I always laugh at people are like, yeah, Jason, I need to get rid of this one expense because I want to sell. I want the EBITDA to be the best. I'm like, you've heard of adjusted EBITDA, right? Like, take that out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's going to be add backs, right? Like any buyer will do add backs or they'll take away too. And I think another thing for agency owners to understand is that if you're paying yourself a really low salary,
Oh, yeah.
the buying agency is going to adjust that on your EBITDA and say, you should have been making this much salary. So really what you're saying, and I think I'm saying is, it's really hard to artificially inflate your EBITDA. Like the numbers need to be solid numbers.
Well, and the IRS
right?
can go after you for that too, right? Like if they're like, oh, you're not paying Social Security and all this, like you wouldn't pay a CEO $15,000 a year. Like a CEO is going to make at least $150,000. So that's your salary. And then the rest could be all distributions. Like that's fine.
Yeah, you have to have a baseline there. So I think that's funny. And then one other thing I heard that I think could be useful for the listeners is when you're getting ready to sell your agency, like at 2 to 3 mark, the advice that I've heard is to make sure you're paying out most of your free cash on a monthly or quarterly basis, that you're not leaving a lot of cash in the company so that they can see, a potential buyer can see that there is not a lot of cash left in the business, right? That's not what you want to see. And that there's enough cash flow to support the business, right? That you're making regular draws, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. So why do you think that though? Why do they not want to see a lot of cash in the bank account?
I think it just shows them that if there's consistent cash withdrawals and that you're able to operate on kind of minimal cash in the business, then it shows that you have a consistent flow of cash coming into the business and that you're operating a business where you can make draws on a monthly basis, sometimes at least quarterly. It shows that you have a good business, right? You have a good working, running business.
I'm curious with you guys, because I know everyone's always different. Obviously, don't give us the number of cash in the bank account, but how many months of cash do you want in reserves that makes you guys feel comfortable? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So kind of rule of thumb that we've heard is 3 months cash. But after, again, talking to, because we have companies approach us quite a bit for selling. We're not ready to do that, but we do a lot of research. Again, both me and my partner are very finance focused. And so we do our research, and a lot of the advisors we've talked to say, hey, you should really cut that down if you're getting ready to sell to about a month to a month and a half of cash. I think for an agency, depending on how stable you feel like your agency is, and if you have a gorilla client, that's a big one too. I would say, anywhere between 3 months and 1.5 months. But if you're kind of new into this world, or you had a really good client, but you're not sure where your next client's going to come from, I would say 3 months of operating cash needs to stay in the company.
God, those advisors should be fired. Like have a month. I don't agree with, but I like the 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it also depends on your risk tolerance.
100%. Yeah.
I also tell everybody, in the mastermind, I think I've said it a couple of times on the podcast, always get a line of credit when you don't need it, because that will help you. Especially if you do, like you said, have that gorilla client. Right? If you have a client over 20% of your revenue, I would treat that as one that could go away tomorrow and have enough cash to support the team, because the worst thing you can do is just be scrambling. And then you start making decisions based on money, which you start taking on bad clients that could cost you team members, could cost you reputation, could do all these different things.
Again, I think it comes to risk tolerance too, and how savvy you are at finance and managing that world, right? Again, I would recommend, probably to your point, any sort of agency is at 3 months, right? It's like the normal operating cash. So
I have one member that told me like 6 months because she's not like very risk tolerant. I'm like, that's kind of too much. Like we should, but, and we were at a point where we had lots of cash in the bank. I mean, we had 40% margins, and we were well over the 8-figure mark for the first agency. So, what we did is we would have our operating accounts at 3 months, but then we'd have investment accounts for all the excess cash that we could liquidate at any time as well. But we were just like, we don't want it to sit in the bank. It's probably just going to lose money. My business partner did more of this. It was like certain accounts, like sweep accounts, I guess we had, where we had enough in there, we'd take it out at night, invest it, put it back in. And
yeah.
those different goofy things that would work.
Yeah, there's all kinds of unique investment strategies if you do have some extra cash laying around, for sure.
Well, cool. Well, awesome. Well, is there anything I didn't ask you, Lacie, that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
I think the only thing maybe to touch on is, how do you get your revenues up, right? It's the kind of bigger question, but at least in our perspective, niching down has been really, there's a saying that says the riches are in the niches. And I really do believe that. I think when you try to be everything to everybody, it is extremely hard to scale your agency, right? Because now you're hiring maybe a content person for that one client that has a content piece that you could not say no to, right? Because you really wanted that revenue. And what you don't realize is that you're losing money that way. So I think if you're struggling with that top line revenue number, or even the EBITDA number, those are kind of some things I would start to look at is, are you offering the right services? Are you really focusing on what you're good at or great at, I would say, and not necessarily what you're just good at?
Yeah, I was talking to the mastermind a little while ago, and I said, look, the more you focus, the more you can charge, right? The more you can charge, the more profitability you actually get. Because they were going, how do I scale? Like, I can't take on any more clients. I'm like, you probably shouldn't take on any more clients based on what I know about your business. But what if we could double the pricing? I'm not just saying double the pricing for the existing clients, but double the pricing for the new clients coming in. And then the delta is going to be so big of a difference in the next 6 months, because any decision we make today is going to affect 6 months down the road. That's how I always looked at it, especially on the finance part, and be like, then we go to the old clients. And Dean was able to do this. He made $72,000 more dollars just by going to his old clients after he realized the gap, the opportunity cost. $72,000 more a month in reoccurring by just raising your pricing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We have an exercise every year where we look at our client roster and decide, have we outgrown some of our clients? And that's really important. It's a hard thing to do because a lot of those clients you have great relationships with, they're actually a really good client, but they may not be serving your agency the way they need to be serving them. Like they may have been you 5 years ago and they're no longer you now because you've kind of outgrown them.
Exactly right. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on the show. And for everyone listening, if you want to really know how to scale your business without burning out and screaming into that pillow, and you really want to be surrounded with the right people in the right room, I'd love for you guys to go to agencymastery.io. Check us out. And until next time, have a swank day.